The Scott Jennings Show is proudly sponsored by Lear Capital. Since 1997, Lear has helped Americans protect their retirement accounts and savings with physical gold and silver. With thousands of five-star reviews and $3 billion in transactions, Lear is who I trust to help me buy gold and silver. Visit LearScott.com.
The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Secretary Hegseth and General Cain brief the press. We'll have the latest on Iran, also with the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. That comes up in mere minutes. Primary night results in Texas yield some surprises. We'll talk to Harry Enton from CNN about that. College basketball analyst and Jewish American advocate Bruce Pearl responding to Gavin Newsom's latest anti-Semitic garbage. And an important child safety bill is up for consideration in a House committee. We'll talk about that later in the hour. It is Wednesday, March the 4th. This is Common Sense for the American people. I'm Scott Jennings, broadcasting live today from New York City. And we begin with the success of the U.S. and Israeli joint military action in Iran, just ruthlessly efficient and brutal in its execution so far. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and Joint Chiefs Chairman Dan Cain briefed the press this morning. Here's General Cain with the latest in Cut 25.
To date, we've hit over 2,000 targets, as Admiral Cooper said in his video last night. We've destroyed more than 20 Iranian naval vessels, including, in addition to the frigate outside of the area, one submarine, and effectively neutralized at this point in time Iran's major naval presence in theater out there. As the Secretary showed the video, for the first time since 1945, a United States Navy fast attack submarine has sunk an enemy combatant ship using a single Mark 48 torpedo to achieve immediate effect, sending the warship to the bottom of the sea.
And Secretary Hegseth could not be happier with the effort so far. Here he is in Cut 26.
Iran cannot outlast us. We're going to ensure through violence of action and our offensive capabilities and our defensive capabilities, as I said, that we set the tone and the tempo of this fight. That's why stories and speculation about different things that try to make it look like we're limited in what we can do. The only limits we have in this is President Trump's desire to achieve specific effects on behalf of the American people.
And one piece of breaking news just into the Scott Jennings Show. Israel has eliminated a man named Rahman Mokaddam, who was head of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Special Operations Division. He was behind the assassination attempt on President Trump on the eve of the 2024 election. And in addition to that, he plotted to kill other people, former cabinet officials, ambassadors, and activists, and he wanted to do it on American soil. He is no longer with us. Here to discuss the war effort, one of the most important policymakers in Washington, the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Brian Mast of Florida, is here. Mr. Chairman, welcome to the show. And before I ask you a question, I just want to tell our listeners about your experience. Before coming to Congress, you served in the Army for 12 years, Bronze Star, Army Commendation Medal for Valor, Purple Heart, Defense Meritorious Service Medal. And while deployed in Afghanistan, you lost both legs while defusing an IED. Ladies and gentlemen, we're speaking today with a bona fide American hero. Brian Mast has seen combat up close. Chairman Mast, what is your reaction to the performance of the U.S. military so far?
I'm thankful for the determination, the sense to duty of our service members, their training that they've undertaken, as Secretary Hegseth pointed out, the violence of action that they're bringing against our enemy. Iran is our enemy, an imminent threat of an enemy that for years, not just years ago, but even in the last 4 days and 4 months and all points in between, has been attacking the United States of America and looking for every opportunity to do so. So my reaction is simply this. Thank you, President Trump, for finally responding on behalf of the United States of America against this imminent threat. And on top of that, finally, not that this was the mission purpose, but it's there, finally avenging all of those Americans that have been killed at the hand of Iran for the first time.
Yes, for 47 years, they have exported terror. They have killed American servicemen. They have maimed our servicemen and other American personnel. Make no mistake, you are correct. They are the enemy. Mr. Chairman, General Cain said that Iran's theater ballistic missile shots fired are now down 86% from the first day, and they've had a 23% decrease in just the last 24 hours. Their one-way attack drone shots are now down 73% from the opening days. Do you believe that we are close to a moment where Iran will effectively have no ability to defend itself against the U.S. and Israel?
Let me answer affirmatively. Number one, yes, and let me explain why. So you're saying the volume and the frequency of Iranian attacks is coming lower and lower every single minute. Why is that? Because we are destroying their ability to conduct any type of offensive operation. They might have large caches of ordnance that they can fire at us, but if they don't have the capabilities to fire them, what are they going to do? Throw them at us? They don't have the opportunity to deploy it. And so that opportunity for volume and frequency is getting lower every single minute.
Chairman Mast, we have seen Iran launch missiles at Turkey today. They have now attacked 16 countries since the beginning of hostilities. Do you believe or expect any of our allies here, beyond Israel, to join in with military activity of their own?
Allies have already joined this coalition. Allies that have been struck throughout the Gulf states, the region, have already joined this coalition. Certainly defensively, they've been a part of this coalition, and some of them working on advancing their capabilities offensively in terms of their participation.
Mr. Chairman, Brian Mast, by the way, of Florida, head of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, we have seen good amount of support from many allies, like Germany yesterday in the Oval Office. But other countries like the UK and Spain have frankly been feckless. What's your comment on those countries? What would you say to their heads of state right now?
Get with the winning team. Recognize that the United States of America has been your hedge of protection against this threat year in, year out. And now it's time to show where you stand in the fight. Do you stand with China and Russia and Iran? Or do you stand with the United States of America as a part of our allied group in standing against that evil, the same evil that was allied with Venezuela, same evil that was allied with North Korea? Where do you stand? Because when the dust settles, we're going to remember that.
Mr. Chairman, the Democrats have apparently, we're told, decided to continue to vote to shut down the Department of Homeland Security this week. It's been shut down for a couple of weeks now. And that's despite the fact that we are at war and we are seeing increased terrorism threats at home, such as what happened in Austin, Texas over the weekend. On a scale of 1 to completely insane, how crazy is this position being taken by the Democratic Party?
Beyond insane. And they're the source of the instability as well. As I'm sure many have spoken about this, they were obviously letting thousands, tens of thousands through our southern border. We know for a fact just a couple of years ago, there were several Iranians that came through the southern border. They were apprehended and they were part of a plot to assassinate George H.W. Bush. Those were the kind of mission sets that they were undertaking on behalf of Iran on American soil, let through by the porous Biden administration border. And now they don't want to fund Homeland Security to go out there, apprehend these individuals, and defend under all of the umbrellas that are Homeland Security, defend the people of the United States on our homeland. That's just par for the course for them. They have never wanted to defend our homeland, and they've only done things to weaken us. This is a continuation of that policy.
I want to return to one thing you said earlier, the concept of imminent threat. You have people in the media and in the Democratic Party saying Iran was not an imminent threat. However, they have ballistic missiles, they have attack drones, and they told our negotiators they had enough nuclear material to make about 11 nuclear bombs. If that doesn't say imminent threat, I don't know what was. Let's go over this one more time. Are you confident that Iran was an imminent threat and that the commander-in-chief made the correct decision to strike first?
Completely confident, number one. Let's bring it more to my legislative world. Numerous times over the last year and several years, nearly every single Democrat and nearly every single Republican have voted to say, Iran's nuclear program is an existential threat to America. The proxies that Iran is supporting are an existential threat to America. The this, all of these things, literally votes taken to say a serious threat to America. And in some cases, even voting to say, use all means necessary to eliminate that threat. They all want to forget that they voted on that now. Why? Because it's President Trump that is in office finally doing something about this imminent threat. I would say this: there was an imminent threat from Iran only because there has never been an American president that was willing to make it an imminent response when Iran attacks us.
Chairman Brian Mast, House Foreign Affairs of Florida, thanks for joining us on the show today. We look forward to having you back in the near future. Quick word from our friends at Relief Factor. We're getting customer stories from around the country. Everybody taking Relief Factor is telling us it's working for them. I can tell you in the Jennings household, we know it's working too. My father will tell you right now it's made a difference in his life. If pain's holding you back, try Relief Factor's 3-week quick start. See how it works for you. Call 1-800-4RELIEF or go to relieffactor.com. When we come back, primary night in Texas. We'll tell you what happened. Stay tuned for that. Harry Enton is here on the Scott Jennings Show right after this.
Hey, it's Scott. Listen, when I prep for my CNN debates, I need to know exactly where the national conversation is headed. And it turns out it's helpful to know that in your everyday life as well. And that's why I tried out Free Spoke. Now, it's my go-to place for search and for news. When you use Free Spoke, it's a search platform that gives you the full story. You get information from the left, you get it from the right, you get non-mainstream, you get independent journalists, you get podcast insights. What you get from Free Spoke is the full story all in one place. And here's the thing, when you search on Free Spoke, you know they are not going to sell your data. It's quite something, actually. It's fast, it's private, it's unbiased. Free Spoke helps me research topics and make sure that I understand the full picture. You can have this tool as well. Just go to freespoke.com/Jennings to download their app for free. And as an exclusive for my listeners, use promo code Jennings after you download it and get 35% off the premium version. You go ad-free and you unlock deeper elite tools to have control over your information. So don't rely on incomplete information. Take control of your own information environment. See every perspective so you can think for yourself, just like I do before every debate.
When he's not in the Oval Office or owning the libs on CNN, he's here with us. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
And it's Wednesday, March the 4th. Last night we started the primary season. The big story is Texas, where the Republicans sent incumbent Senator John Cornyn to a runoff with Attorney General Ken Paxton, and the Democrats nominated outright a state representative named James Tallarico and appear to have ended the career of a sitting congresswoman named Jasmine Crockett. Let's hear a little bit of that.
Is both masculine and feminine and everything in between. God is non-binary.
That's James Tallarico, the Democrat nominee for Senate in Texas. Here to discuss these results, CNN polling and data guru Harry Enton is on the phone. Harry, looks to me last night like Senator Cornyn overperformed a bit on the GOP side. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that. And Scott, we were literally talking before the break, and then just as we were going on, my crackpot producer comes over and shows to me why are the prediction markets all of a sudden Cornyn jumping way up. Check out this headline from The Atlantic. Trump is expected to endorse Cornyn. So that is huge, huge, huge news. John Cornyn outperformed last night, getting the most votes, which is very much unlike what a lot of the polling data said. And Donald Trump likes a winner. And Donald Trump at this point, it seems to me, if this reporting is corroborated, is going to get behind John Cornyn, which would be absolutely huge news for Republicans nationwide because Cornyn is seen as the more electable candidate come the fall against Tallarico.
Well, this is breaking news if, in fact, this comes to pass. So I guess the question here would be, does Ken Paxton continue? It would be difficult, I think, for him to defeat John Cornyn if President Trump is fully behind the incumbent senator.
I believe that it would be very difficult, and in fact, I have it right here. If you look at the Trump Truth Social, his truth, essentially that he says that whomever he doesn't endorse should drop out. And that would make it very, very difficult for Ken Paxton or whomever does not get the endorsement, which we expect to be Paxton. We expect that the endorsement probably goes to Cornyn if the Atlantic is correct. That would make things very difficult for Ken Paxton to go on. And again, that is just such big news for the Republican Party because Cornyn is seen as the far more electable candidate come the fall, and Republicans want to be able to hold on to that seat.
Yeah, massive amount of resources already spent on this Republican primary. If Trump comes in and Paxton drops out, that would save the GOP a lot of money. On the Democratic side, Tallarico pulled away from Crockett at the end of the race. Tell us about the primary dynamics here that ultimately put Tallarico out on top and the nomination outright.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of different dynamics. Boy, that was a very, as someone who sort of sits back and watches these things, a very fun primary. Insofar as obviously Jasmine Crockett was the national name, right? Really anti-Trump, big support within the African-American community. And James Tallarico is a state legislator. No one had really heard of him until relatively recently. He had gone on the Joe Rogan show. He was, seen as this dynamic speaker, from Austin, the whole situation. And essentially, Tallarico was able to put together a coalition of white liberals, Latinos. That was the key question. Could he win Latinos over? He did seem to do that based upon the county level results, the precinct level results. And then what you saw was that Jasmine Crockett still held on to that black vote. And I think the big question for Democrats, especially if Cornyn is the nominee, is whether or not they can come together as a party and actually give Cornyn a run for his money. We'll just have to wait and see. But obviously, it was a very nasty primary. There was a third candidate, Colin Eldrad, who was a former congressman who's again running for Congress, who had endorsed Crockett. Kamala Harris had been behind Crockett. But Tallarico had run, by most people's metrics, a much more aggressive and better campaign, no doubt helped out by that interview with Stephen Colbert that didn't air on network. And then, of course, on CBS, and they claimed that there was censorship, and then aired on YouTube, and they got a whole lot of press out of that.
Yeah, they claimed that. It wasn't true, but they certainly claimed that.
They claimed it.
They claimed it. That's right. We got 30 seconds, Harry. One other thing that happened in Texas last night: Congressman Dan Crenshaw lost his primary and lost it rather handily, didn't he?
He lost it very handily. That was one of the biggest shockers of the night. Trump withheld his endorsement there. Ted Cruz got behind Crenshaw's challenger, and I think it just shows that Ted Cruz still a big name in Texas politics. And if you don't get Trump's endorsement in a Republican primary, especially if you're incumbent, you can wave adios amigos, goodbye, see you later. Trump still is the heart of the GOP.
That's Harry Enton from CNN. Harry, thanks for analyzing last night's primary results. We expect to hear from you throughout the year as we track the midterm elections. When we come back after this break, legendary basketball coach Bruce Pearl joins the show. It's Common Sense for the American People. I'm Scott Jennings in New York City. Stay with us. You don't want to miss a thing.
Hey, it's Scott, and I'm so excited to welcome Crowd Health as a new partner to the Scott Jennings Show. For several years, I'm hearing more people voicing frustration with traditional health insurance. Bad incentives baked into Obamacare have sent costs soaring. The rules are a maze of jargon, and people feel stuck. That's why I want to tell you about my new partner, Crowd Health. Crowd Health isn't insurance. It's a community that cuts out the middleman to help one another fund medical expenses, giving you more freedom, fewer surprises, and greater control over your healthcare choices. And when it comes to cost, members are spending hundreds less per month compared to traditional insurance. Right now, you can get started for just $99 per month for your first 3 months when you use the code SCOTT. Go to joincrowdhealth.com. That's joincrowdhealth.com and use code SCOTT. Again, joincrowdhealth.com, code SCOTT. Quick reminder, Crowd Health is not insurance. You can opt out, take your power back, and that is how we win.
News, comment, and the stories and facts the mainstream media refuses to discuss. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
Okay, it's Wednesday, March the 4th. Scott Jennings here, broadcasting on Salem, live from New York City. The breaking political news right now is that apparently, and this flows out of the Texas primary results last night, apparently, and in a statement, President Trump says he is about to make an endorsement in the Texas Senate race. The results last night put John Cornyn, the incumbent, slightly ahead of his challenger, Ken Paxton, who's the Attorney General. Neither got to 50%, so they would be headed to a runoff, a very costly and I'm sure nasty runoff come May. But if President Trump makes an endorsement in this race, and there is some reporting indicating that he is going to endorse John Cornyn, the incumbent, if that happens, what President Trump has said is that he would like the other person, whoever he doesn't endorse, to drop out of the race. Whether they would do that or not, I don't know. I can only tell you that it would be difficult to defeat President Trump and his candidate in a Texas primary. So we are watching that. We're also waiting here in just a few moments. We expect to have legendary basketball coach Bruce Pearl on the phone. He's traveling in Nashville, Tennessee. I believe he's actually testifying before the Tennessee State Legislature today, and we'll hopefully get to him here in just a moment. The other news of the day, of course, is that the administration continues to project strength and confidence in the military action against Iran. And they also continue to answer questions about the motivations for the war, the rationale, and the timing of it. Let's listen to Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He met with the press yesterday. Here's cut number 2.
Go ahead. Several Democrats criticized what you said and argued that
the question is, several Democrats criticize. They're going to always criticize. We've been doing this for years, guys. They come out. I'll tell you right now, they're going to come out after the briefing and say we didn't hear anything. We have more questions than answers. You mark my words. But we still do these briefings. Go ahead.
So, Mr. Secretary, their criticism was on the timeline. They said that Israel is dictating the timeline for the United States.
No,
and as you know, several people on the right have also agreed with that. How would you respond to that?
The United States made a decision. Under the President of the United States made a decision. This is intolerable. Iran cannot have these missiles, cannot have these drones, cannot threaten the world. The President said this is the weakest they've ever been. If we don't hit them now, a year from now, a year and a half from now, no one will be able to touch them, and they'll be able to do whatever they want. And he made a decision to go. And he made a decision to go in a joint operation because it gave us the highest chance of success. And he made the decision to go first because he concluded that we were not going to get hit first. We were not going to absorb a blow from them. We were going to go first. He was not going to run the risk that they could attack us before we could hit them, because in addition to costing lives, it would undermine the effectiveness of our operation.
Secretary Rubio talking to the press yesterday, and much was said this morning in the briefing with Secretary Hegseth and General Cain about the impressive and lethal coordination and cooperation that the United States military is having with our ally Israel. Let's hear from Secretary Hegseth about that here in cut number 18.
To our steadfast partner, Israel, your mission is being executed with unmatched skill and iron determination. Fighting shoulder to shoulder with such a capable ally is a true force multiplier and a breath of fresh air. We salute your courage and your contribution. 4 days in, we have only just begun to fight. America fights to win. And in Operation Epic Fury, we are. May God's providence cover and protect our troops always.
Now, alongside Secretary Hegseth this morning was General Cain, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. A couple of interesting things came out of General Cain's briefing. First of all, and we talked about this earlier in the show with Chairman Brian Mast from the House Foreign Affairs Committee, the idea that each day of this war so far, we have seen an intense degradation in the volume of missiles and one-way attack drones that Iran has been able to use against U.S. and Israeli forces. Let's hear from General Cain about that in cut number 15.
As of this morning, U.S. Central Command is making steady progress. Iran's theater ballistic missile shots fired are down 86% from the first day of fighting, with a 23% decrease just in the last 24 hours. And their one-way attack drone shots are down 73% from the opening days. This progress has allowed CENTCOM to establish localized air superiority across the southern flank of the Iranian coast and penetrate their defenses with overwhelming precision and firepower. We will now begin to expand inland, striking progressively deeper into Iranian territory and creating additional freedom of maneuver for U.S. forces.
gave an intense briefing this morning. One other thing that has happened since 1945, a United States submarine has not sunk an enemy craft. Until now, General Cain announced for the first time since World War II, a United States Navy fast attack submarine sunk an enemy combatant ship. Let's hear a little bit about that in cut number 25.
To date, we've hit over 2,000 targets, as Admiral Cooper said in his video last night. We've destroyed more than 20 Iranian naval vessels, including, in addition to the frigate outside of the area, one submarine, and effectively neutralized at this point in time Iran's major naval presence in theater out there. As the Secretary showed the video, for the first time since 1945, a United States Navy fast attack submarine has sunk an enemy combatant ship using a single Mark 48 torpedo to achieve immediate effect, sending the warship to the bottom of the sea.
General Cain talking about, if you've logged onto social media and seen, the president, by the way, has used social media to post the video of the torpedo hitting the Iranian warship. It is quite something. Someone we haven't heard from much this week, but had some comments this morning. Speaker Mike Johnson talking about the overall policy and the posture of the United States here and its attacks on Iran. Let's listen to Speaker Johnson here in cut number 20 about how he thinks everything is going.
One last note, there's a misconception that Operation Epic Fury is in any way a diversion from Republican demands for peace. It's the opposite. Peace is not secured through appeasement, and it's certainly not secured by airdropping billions of dollars on terrorist regimes, which is what previous Democrat administrations have done. Peace is secured through strength. That is the principle that our party has stood for my entire life, and on principle before that, articulated the idea of peace through strength. That's what this administration is demonstrating, and that is why America is the last great superpower on the planet, and all freedom-loving people around the world are grateful to God for that.
All right, we'll catch up on the latest on Iran later in the show. We're expecting, I think, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt to do a briefing today, so if anything breaks on that, we will let you know. And now we do, live from Nashville, Tennessee, have legendary basketball coach, my friend, Bruce Pearl, former head coach at Auburn, now analyst for TNT Sports and CBS Sports. He is an outspoken advocate for America's Jewish community and also now affiliated with the America First Policy Institute. Am I correct in understanding that we have Bruce Pearl on the phone?
You got me, Scott, and it's great to be with you.
Glad to hear your voice, my friend, and we're grateful for your time today. I wanted to talk to you about the war effort and about overall issues related to the United States alliance with Israel. And I want to play a clip for you that frankly outrages me and has outraged many Americans this morning. This is California Governor Gavin Newsom. Last night, he had comments about Israel. We're going to listen to these comments and we'll react, but prepare to be disgusted here in Gavin Newsom, cut number 6.
And a lot of Democrats have looked at the Netanyahu regime and felt like, you know what, we don't like the trajectory he's on. It's time to rethink the U.S. relationship with Israel, especially military support.
Well,
where do you
Bibi's
stand?
making that easy right now. Let's talk about that. But the issue of Bibi's interesting because he's got his own domestic issues. He's trying to stay out of jail. He's got an election coming up. He's potentially on the ropes. He's got folks, the hard line, that want to annex the West Bank. I mean, Freeman and others are talking about it appropriately, sort of an apartheid state. They couldn't even, we're talking about regime change. For 2 years, they haven't even been able to solve the Hamas question in Israel. So this is, I want to be careful here, but, in so many ways, that influence in the context of the conversation of where Trump ultimately landed on this is pretty damn self-evident.
Gavin Newsom called Israel an apartheid state. Gavin Newsom apparently has no understanding of the connection between Iran and Hamas. And apparently Gavin Newsom, Coach Pearl, looks at this situation and believes the United States is on the wrong side, that we should be, I guess, helping Iran and not Israel. How does all this hit your ear?
I don't even know where to begin, but you're listening to a politician. You're not listening to a leader. You're not listening to a president. You're not really listening to a governor. You're listening to a clown. The current leadership in Israel is supported by the current opposition in Israel because they're fighting for their survival. But what does a politician do? He talks about he's fighting, he's on the ropes. He's got an election. He's got domestic issues. He's trying to stay out of jail. That sounds like a politician. That's not what Prime Minister Netanyahu is. He's a leader of the state of Israel who has been in an existential battle for their survival since their state was born 80 years ago. And when we hear people say that they don't think it's a very good idea for the Iranians to get a nuclear weapon, we need to thank the state of Israel, and particularly the Prime Minister of the state of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, for his life service, who would place number one on that list, not allowing the Iranian terrorist regime to acquire a nuclear weapon. They already have the ballistic missiles to deliver such a weapon, and they've demonstrated by their actions since 1979 their willingness to be able to use it. These comments are disgusting. They're inaccurate. They're political. And all I can say is thank God for President Donald Trump, and thank God for the people in the United States of America that made the choice to bring him back into office, to make our country great again and save the world.
Yeah, amen to that, Coach Pearl. I was asked on CNN last night, well, what changed, Scott? Why now? They've always been able to strike us with these missiles. And I said, Abby, you know what changed? We finally had a president with the you-know-whats to do something about it. This should have, as President Trump said, this should have been taken care of years ago. Now the threat is imminent. Now it's being taken care of. We no longer issue empty threats. We follow up on them. Coach Bruce Pearl, thanks for calling in. I know you're busy down in Nashville, Tennessee today, and we're grateful for your time. We have to take a break now. When we come back, we're going to be talking about an important piece of legislation that's coming up in the House this week. You don't want to miss that here on the Scott Jennings Show. Gold and silver recently soared to record highs and then pulled back. So are precious metals still a good buy? Many Wall Street experts predict higher prices ahead. Why? Well, because we still have trillions in national debt, a declining dollar, and inflation that keeps shrinking our savings. Even with corrections along the way, gold remains a historical hedge for wealth protection. That's why Morgan Stanley's chief investment officer ditched the 60-40 stocks and bonds portfolio and is recommending up to 20% in precious metals. They're getting educated, and you should too. Call Lear Capital at 1-800-880-2424 for your free gold investment kit and learn how you could qualify for up to $20,000 in bonus gold. Lear Capital has over $3 billion in transactions and thousands of five-star reviews. Call 1-800-880-2424, 1-800-880-2424, or visit learscott.com.
Ready for more common sense? Here's CNN's senior political commentator, New York Times best-selling author, and America's favorite political pundit, Scott Jennings.
Here is something that every parent needs to hear, and that is that more kids are being targeted online through gaming platforms, social media, and messaging apps. Our friends and partners at Child Help hear from children every day who were contacted through these games and apps, kids who were groomed, manipulated, threatened by adults or pretending to be somebody else. One boy, in fact, reached out to Child Help's chat hotline. The boy was terrified and ashamed. An adult that he met in an online game was demanding photos and threatening to lie to his parents if he didn't comply. He didn't know what to do. He calls up Child Help, and that chat with Child Help may well have saved his life. That's why Child Help matters. That's why I personally donate and trust these guys. I'm asking you to donate to their life-saving programs. Every $27 helps save one child from abuse. You can do it at childhelp.org/Scott or text Child Help to 94878. I encourage you to give just $27 today. And to continue this discussion about what can be done to protect kids online, Melissa McKay is here, the president of the Digital Childhood Institute. Melissa, welcome into the Scott Jennings Show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Glad to see you there. And Melissa, there is a piece of legislation up in the House Energy and Commerce Committee tomorrow. It is called the App Store Accountability Act. In your opinion, is this what we need to better protect kids from online predators?
100%. I've been a child online safety advocate for almost 10 years. I've worked on around a dozen pieces of legislation, tried all sorts of things to fix the online safety problem, and this is one of my favorite pieces of legislation. It's very simple, it's very elegant, it gives parents the tools they need to protect their own kids online.
Let's get into a little more detail about the bill. What exactly does it do? If it were to pass and be signed into law, what changes would we see in the way children and parents are interacting with these app stores?
Sure, there's three parts of the bill. The first part is it requires parental consent for every app downloaded in-app purchase. And the reason that we're requiring that is that every app download is a huge 50-page contract the kids have to sign that gives access to their data and other stuff to not only, trillion-dollar tech companies, but even tiny developers. So we always feel like that if there is a child contracting with a trillion-dollar company, there should be an adult involved. The second piece is age verification.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah, go ahead. The second piece is age verification at the App Store level, where it's more centralized and private. And the final piece that is just so critical is that for the first time, we're requiring apps to actually rate themselves appropriately. Up until now, for the last 15 years, it's just been a self-operation where apps get to basically claim almost whatever they want about their safety. And we're now tying that to deceptive advertising laws.
So, as we mentioned, this legislation is being marked up in the House Energy and Commerce Committee, I think tomorrow. What's your political assessment? Does it have a lot of support? Where do you see members of Congress coming down on this? What's the scoreboard right now?
Oh, there's an enormous amount of political support. About 180 of the largest and most established child safety organizations across the United States support this. So we're just thrilled to see this being advanced in Congress. I think there'll be a lot of support as soon as it gets on the floor. I think there's a lot of jockeying to decide what gets out of committee, and we're just so happy to be on the list.
And where is the tech industry on this? I know there's a lot of interest, a lot of companies at play. Are they generally for it? Are they trying to get it across the finish line? Where do those players fall out?
Yeah, I think that it depends. Obviously, app stores, this is the first time they're being regulated that I know of in history. So Apple and Google have come out swinging. They're putting out deceptions and misrepresentations about the App Store Accountability Act. So obviously they hate it. I think other tech companies fall on a spectrum, but we just know that all the child advocates love the bill. So.
All right. Well, we'll be watching this testimony in the House Energy and Commerce Committee. The legislation is called the App Store Accountability Act, and that voice you've been hearing is Melissa McKay, who's president of the Digital Childhood Institute and an advocate for keeping kids safe online. Melissa, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll look forward to seeing what happens in committee tomorrow. Before we take a top-of-the-hour break, quick note, the cruise is coming in November. Mike Gallagher and I going on the Gulf of America cruise. We want you, our listeners, to join us. Luxury ship. We're going through the Gulf. We're going to talk politics for a week and eat great food. Swim in the ocean, walk on the beaches, visit all these amazing locations. We want you to be there. Text the word cruise to 94878. More after this. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. Stay with us.
The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
It is Wednesday, March 4th. Common sense for the American people. Scott Jennings here with all the breaking news today, and let's in fact get a quick check of the headlines. The White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt is at the podium briefing the press there in the briefing room, and she's made a little bit of news on the war effort as it relates to Spain. Now, you might know that Spain was not wanting to allow the United States to use certain military bases for operations. They were being a little bit of a bad friend, if you look at it in a certain way. Caroline Leavitt, though, had an update on that. Let's listen to her in cut number 28.
To the economy and the cost of oil spiking, is there a need to start those Navy escorts in the Strait of Hormuz now to sort of blunt the impact to people and also because Spain is a member of the EU, does that at all put a wrinkle in the president's plan for a trade embargo with them?
With respect to Spain, I think they heard the president's message yesterday loud and clear. And it's my understanding over the past several hours they've agreed to cooperate with the U.S. military. And so I know that the U.S. military is coordinating with their counterparts in Spain. But the president expects all of our European allies, of course, to cooperate in this long sought after mission, not just for the United States, but also for Europe, to crush the rogue Iranian regime that, again, not only threatens America, but also threatens our European allies as well. With respect to oil prices and the economy here at home, of course, this is something that Secretary Bessent, Secretary Wright, the National Economic Council of Energy, that is led by Secretary Burgum, has been long working on and well in advance. Yesterday, President Trump announced the U.S. Development Finance Corporation will provide political risk insurance at a very reasonable price for crude carriers and cargo ships operating in and around the Gulf. And as you pointed out, Jackie, the president said if necessary and when appropriate, the U.S. Navy will begin escorting tankers through the Strait of Hormuz. I think it speaks to why this action was so necessary that ultimately.
Caroline Levitt briefing reporters just a few minutes ago saying that it's her understanding that Spain is now cooperating with the U.S. military, which would be a good development. And a quick note on the military operations. As you know, we've had 6 American soldiers killed in the fighting so far. The War Department has identified 4 of them. Let's listen to cut number 16.
This just in, some sad news. The Pentagon just released the identities of 4 of the 6 U.S. service members who have been killed in this war. This specifically happened during an Iranian drone strike Sunday in Kuwait. The soldiers are 35-year-old Captain Cody Cork, 42-year-old Sergeant First Class Noah Tegens, 39-year-old Sergeant First Class Nicola Moore, and 20-year-old Sergeant Declan Cody. All 4 were assigned to the 103rd Command. It's an Army Reserve Sustainment Unit out of Iowa. We'll bring you more about the casualties when we get more details about them and their photographs. May their memories be a blessing. Our deepest condolences to their friends and family.
That was my CNN colleague Jake Tapper doing that reporting, and indeed, may God rest the souls of these brave soldiers. They died fighting for a noble cause, and they died fighting, by the way, for their country, the United States of America. Unlike the disgusting assertions that they died for someone else or some other country made by people like Megyn Kelly. Despicable, disgusting thing to say. These are American heroes. They died fighting for the United States of America. We now turn to education news. Jewish students being harassed, teachers' unions fighting against school choice, school administrators hiding gender transitions from parents. We have covered a lot on education in the last few weeks, but there is some good news for parents who might be looking for new and better choices. Our guest this hour, Tommy Schultz, is the CEO of the American Federation for Children, the nation's largest school choice advocacy group dedicated to empowering families, especially low-income families, with the freedom to choose the best K through 12 education for their children. Tommy, welcome into the Scott Jennings Show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate your time today. Let's start here. The Education Freedom Tax Credit, which came into law from the One Big Beautiful Bill last summer. Tell us about this tax credit, tell us about the program, and tell us about the status of the individual states opting in to the program.
Sure. Look, this really is, in my view, the best kept secret in the One Big Beautiful Bill. So most people are aware now of the Trump account system where people can invest for the lifetime of their child in their kind of financial security. But at the end of the day, something that's going to come online January 1 of 2027 next year is something that's going to have an immediate impact on your kid's educational destiny. So basically, it's a tax credit for donations to scholarship granting organizations, either locally or nationally. And what that means is that every single person in America with a federal income tax liability can donate up to $1,700, and they can get a 100% federal income tax credit for that. So if you had owed Uncle Sam about $1,700, you could just redirect that funding to a local 501c3 that's giving out scholarships to needy kids. You mentioned states and the state of play. So basically, every Republican governor has opted into this. Jared Polis, the first Democratic governor to opt in, has signaled to his state and to the rest of his colleagues, other Democratic governors, that this is a no-brainer because scholarships can actually be used for things like tutoring services for students in public charter schools or even district schools. So yes, most of the money, I imagine, will be used for scholarships to let families go to access a private school of their choice, but there's a lot of allowable uses within the law. In my view, Scott, this is the biggest philanthropic change that we have made to the tax code basically since the early 1900s, because now all of a sudden, billions of dollars of private voluntary contributions can be coming off the sidelines into K-12 education.
Let's talk about what's going on with the federal bureaucracy in Washington. As you know, the president, he made school choice one of his big focuses during the campaign. He also talked about the bureaucracy in the federal government, in his opinion, being in the way of education and really doing nothing to improve test scores. There's been a steady dismantling of the bureaucracy under Education Secretary Linda McMahon. How is that going, in your opinion? Is the president remaking the federal education bureaucracy in a way that is, in your opinion, advancing the interests of children rather than, I think, what we've seen in the past, which is a bureaucracy advancing the interests of teachers' unions and the bureaucracy itself?
Oh, you're totally right. I mean, the trend lines that Secretary McMahon, President Trump are on in terms of undoing what I believe is probably one of the most central failures in our education policy across the country, which is centralizing education rules, regulations, decision-making in Washington, D.C. Utterly failed attempts over the years, billions and billions of dollars that have flown from Washington, D.C. with nefarious strings attached, co-opting and preempting states to do its bidding. When at the end of the day, as you mentioned, test scores have just been on a steady decline, and they've fallen off dramatically since COVID. Some of the numbers that we're seeing in some of the latest national test scores, it's worse than when we started measuring these things in the 1990s. So when you add up the total tally, we've sent trillions of dollars of federal taxpayer funding from Washington, D.C. all around the country, only to have our kids be as dumb as they ever have been. It's really a tragedy, given that we are the richest, most powerful country in the world. And that's why, at the end of the day, this massive new opportunity that's been created thanks to the One Big Beautiful Bill, where every family in America can suddenly potentially gain access to school choice opportunities thanks to the Education Freedom Tax Credit. This is one of the most significant policy moves we've ever seen. That at the end of the day, it's a tax credit. So as you know, Scott, this is going to be run out of the Department of Treasury. So if and when the Department of Education ends and closes, this will have no nexus within the Department of Education or that bureaucracy at all. This is just a tax credit for donations to scholarship groups, Treasury Department, Scott Bessent and his team. They're writing the rules and regulations as we speak. It comes online next year. So some of the biggest levers we've ever pulled in terms of getting this country back on track in terms of K-12.
Tommy Schultz is the CEO of the American Federation for Children. Tommy, where do we find you online on social media?
Check us out at schoolchoicenow.org. We also, in order to service this massive new federal tax credit opportunity, have created a scholarship fund. AFCscholarshipfund.com will get you to us there. Much more to come. Would be happy to get in touch when the Treasury rules and regulations get written, because I think that will give governors a lot of clarity. Families all across the country will know, is my child eligible? Will we be able to contribute? All those things. Happy to give you further updates.
Tommy Schultz there, one of the good guys trying to make schools better for your kids. Thanks for coming on the show today. Quick listener note coming in from Eileen in Kentucky. Eileen, 87 years old, one of my fellow Kentuckians. She was nice enough to send us a note about Relief Factor. She said she was getting to a point where walking and doing other things had become really difficult. She thought, well, I'm just getting older. I guess it has to be that way. Then she says, I tried Relief Factor. Now she's dancing around again, running around. She started with 3 packets a day. Now she's down to 2. She's seen real improvement in her life. 87 years old, Eileen. If you're having aches and pains, my advice, based on what I'm hearing from real people, is to try the Relief Factor 3-week quick start plan. You can do it by calling 1-800-4RELIEF or go to relieffactor.com. Could you be the next Eileen? Maybe, if you try Relief Factor. When we come back, Gavin Newsom once again disgraces himself and shows himself unfit for the presidency. We'll discuss when we come back. It's Scott Jennings on Salem.
Fighting the left with the best weapon we have, common sense. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
Well, we have yet another bone to pick with the hapless clown, Gavin Newsom. It seems that this man can never quite act normal, and this time it is with some truly disgusting attacks on Israel and the Jewish community. It is breathtaking in its ignorance, and I honestly cannot believe that this man is being taken seriously as a presidential candidate. Last night at a book event alongside of a couple of the Pod Save America goobers, Gavin Newsom made accusations that Israel is an apartheid state, which is A, ridiculous, and B, one of the anti-Semitic tropes you hear running around out there. He made a number of awful, ignorant, stupid, ridiculous claims. Let's listen to Newsom here in cut number 6.
And a lot of Democrats have looked at the Netanyahu regime and felt like, you know what, we don't like the trajectory he's on. It's time to rethink the U.S. relationship with Israel, especially military support.
Well,
where do you
Bibi's
stand?
making that easy right now. Let's talk about that. But the issue of Bibi's interesting because he's got his own domestic issues. He's trying to stay out of jail. He's got an election coming up. He's potentially on the ropes. He's got folks, the hard line, that want to annex the West Bank. I mean, Freeman and others are talking about it appropriately, sort of an apartheid state. They couldn't even, I mean, we're talking about regime change. For 2 years, they haven't even been able to solve the Hamas question in Israel. So this is, I mean, you know, I want to be careful here, but, you know, in so many ways, that influence in the context of the conversation of where Trump ultimately landed on this is pretty damn self-evident.
That was Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, and I just want to bring attention to this clip to all Jewish Democrats out there. This is your party now. This is where they are headed. The frontrunner for the Democratic nomination in 2028 is accusing Israel of being an apartheid state. And the multimillionaire guys who made their living being Obama-era establishment types, the pro-Iran Obama White House guys, they're clapping along like seals. This is the future of the Democratic Party. Who are the candidates getting the most attention in these 2026 primaries right now? Well, it's candidates like Graham Plattner in Maine, a man with a Nazi tattoo who just a few days ago sat down for an interview with a rabid anti-Semite and has since retweeted the content of Holocaust deniers. You have a guy named Abdul El Sayed in Michigan running in a primary there. He has repeatedly claimed, without evidence and erroneously, that Israel is committing a genocide. In many of these Democratic primaries, the contest to out-Palestine the other is laughable and ridiculous, but that's what they think they need to do in order to win. It doesn't matter how moderate or different a candidate is. Whoever the Democratic nominee is in 28 seems destined to be parroting these anti-Israel, anti-Semitic lines. They think it's the only way they can get elected in such a primary with a radical voting base. Any candidate whose political position isn't based in blood libel? I mean, who's left in the Democratic Party? John Fetterman at this point? That's about it. The rest of them know they could probably not win a primary if they said something reasonable, if they said something other than these hateful statements about our ally, Israel. Think about it. We're in a war right now. Our ally is Israel. And Gavin Newsom looks at this situation and says, I think we're on the wrong side. I mean, that's obviously Newsom's position. He said we should have a military embargo against Israel. He says they're an apartheid state. I mean, you get the feeling that Gavin Newsom wishes we were defending Iran against Israel. So that's where we are, Democrats. If you're a Jewish American and you've been voting Democrat, take a good look and a good listen to the likes of Gavin Newsom and Graham Plattner and others. It's pretty disgusting. And as Operation Epic Fury intensifies, the world, and we are all bracing for what comes next. In the Holy Land, we have sirens filling the air. It is a serious situation. The missiles are still falling. And in times like these, it is the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews that's on the ground preparing large-scale distributions of life-saving food and aid and essentials. They're also helping ensure that hospitals and emergency rooms and shelters are stocked with critical medical supplies. We need your help. The IFCJ needs your prayers, and they need your support. Stand with Israel by going to supportifcj.org. That is supportifcj.org. You can help the effort here as Israel faces off, our ally faces off against the despots in Iran. When we come back, if you are interested in the Medicare Advantage program, we have important news. You don't want to miss it. Right, coming up next on the Scott Jennings Show.
Welcome back to the Scott Jennings Show. Common sense for the American people. Glad you're listening to our program today. Interesting story. Last week, the president gave the State of the Union, and he reinforced his promise to protect the safety net programs that take care of the nation's senior citizens, chiefly Medicare and Social Security. Let's listen to that. Here's President Trump.
Also working to make it easier for Americans to save for retirement. And under this administration, we will always protect Social Security and Medicare. They are not protecting it for our seniors. We will always protect Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid.
During the Biden administration, President Biden himself had promised never to cut Medicare, but he in fact did cut the Medicare Advantage program, breaking that promise. Now, today, there are some lingering concerns about the Medicare Advantage program heading into 2027. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, commonly known as CMS, has proposed a near freeze on 2027 Medicare Advantage reimbursement rates, offering a minimal 0.09% increase, which would effectively create a flat funding environment. This proposal from CMS aims to curb overpayments and manage rising healthcare costs, but insurers warn it could lead to higher out-of-pocket costs and reduced benefits for over 35 million people who use the Medicare Advantage program. Here to discuss all of this and how it might affect you is a former colleague of mine from the Bush 43 administration. His name is Darren Grubb. Darren now serves as the spokesman for Medicare Advantage Majority, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting Medicare Advantage and its 35 million users. Darren, welcome into the Scott Jennings Show.
Scott, great to see you, man. Thank you for having me on today.
Yeah, good to see you again, sir. Let's start with the basics. Maybe just tell our listeners, what is Medicare Advantage? Why does this program exist?
Yeah, so Medicare Advantage, of course, is the public-private partnership between the federal government and providers to offer a different option than the traditional Medicare. And so Medicare Advantage provides a comprehensive, high-quality, affordable care that goes beyond traditional fee-for-service Medicare. And so most Medicare Advantage plans include hearing coverage, dental, vision, in-home care, prescription drug coverage. That Medicare Part D that we talk so much about is bundled in most Medicare Advantage plans. And there's a cap on out-of-pocket costs annually, which is particularly important for seniors on fixed incomes, and they are our priority. That's why we're here talking to you today.
And Medicare Advantage, at 35 million people, I mean, it seems like it's working well. I mean, the people that use it, they tend to like it, yes?
They do, yeah. Really high satisfaction rates. Enrollment remains strong year over year. More than half of all eligible beneficiaries, as you mentioned, 35 million seniors and people with disabilities choose Medicare Advantage to meet their needs. And, again, it's kind of the integrated, comprehensive, all in one place healthcare that seniors can use to age, gracefully and independently and on their own terms.
So Medicare Advantage was polled last year. In fact, this poll at the end of 2025 was conducted by President Trump's own pollster, Tony Fabrizio. He polled voters in congressional battleground districts, and he found that senior citizens overwhelmingly oppose cuts to Medicare Advantage. So you're working on this topic every day. Do you personally believe that this is a powerful motivator for senior citizen voters in the upcoming election, the idea that we should not be messing around with or cutting Medicare Advantage?
Yeah, absolutely. And you referenced what the president said in the State of the Union last week. This is an issue he campaigned on in 2024 on standing up for seniors, protecting those safeguard safety net programs for them. In 2024, over 40 million seniors voted. That was the highest turnout of any age group. They are the most reliable and largest voting bloc in the nation, and we expect them to be supporting candidates who are supporting the Medicare Advantage program. The president and his team know this. I mean, Tony Fabrizio, as you mentioned, has called this group the deciders, and supporting, any congressional candidate, a generic GOP candidate, supporting cuts to Medicare Advantage drives a 14-point net loss for that candidate, and opposing cuts improves their standing with voters. We've done a lot of polling on this ourselves. Our own polling showed that 76% of seniors would be less likely to vote for a member of Congress who supports funding cuts to Medicare Advantage program. And so, seniors they're well educated. They're motivated, and they make their voices heard when they need to. And there's a big important midterm election that we have coming up, and they've made it clear that this is a huge priority for them.
Yeah, I'm looking through Darren, I'm looking through the Tony Fabrizio poll. I mean, 91% of the senior citizens support Medicare Advantage. I mean, we sometimes talk a lot about 80-20 issues. This is a 90-10 issue. Very strong support for Medicare Advantage. 84% say they wanted Medicare Advantage funding maintained. 73% said cutting Medicare Advantage is the same as cutting Medicare itself. So obviously this program is popular. Obviously people see the value in it. So let's talk about what's going on right now with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. They've put out this advance notice for rates for 2027. And as I mentioned at the opening, it's a very, very minimal or incremental increase in rates. It effectively creates a flat funding environment. Tell us why this is the wrong idea for Medicare Advantage.
Yeah, so CMS every year, as you know, they put out an advanced rate notice the first of the year, and then they accept public input, through the early spring, and then April they will release the final rate notice. And as you said, they proposed a nearly flat rate notice of, an increase of less than 0.1%, if you think about it that way. And here's the problem. Meanwhile, healthcare costs are climbing. Spending increased in 2024 by 7.2%, and projections are for 2025 it's going to be an increase of 7.1%. And so, with healthcare costs climbing, a 0.09% increase in the federal government's investment in this critical program, it's not going to keep up with rising costs, and there's going to be significant consequences to seniors and caregivers. They're going to have higher out-of-pocket costs. They're going to have higher deductibles, higher premiums, less access to the doctors and services that they rely on and need. And it's a huge challenge right now. And this is a very precarious moment for the Medicare Advantage program.
You think about all the different parts of the American healthcare system, and we often hear about things not working well or inefficiencies, and there's problems throughout the system. It seems to me, just looking at the polling and talking to experts about it, that the Medicare Advantage program is actually one of the things that's working best in American healthcare. You agree with that?
We totally agree with that. Yeah, I mean, that's why 35 million seniors have chosen that program. And a hallmark, Scott, as you well know, of the entire Medicare program is choice. And so every year, seniors have the choice, and once they turn 65, they have the choice whether to re-enroll in their current program, whether it be a traditional fee-for-service Medicare plan or Medicare Advantage plan, to meet the best needs for their health care. And so, again, choice is a big part of it. As you mentioned, and we've talked about, the satisfaction rates for Medicare Advantage are extremely high among beneficiaries. They appreciate all of the services of Medicare, provided in one comprehensive plan. That makes it easier to go to the doc for preventative health care, for wellness checkups, which reduces the chance that they may have to go to an ER or a hospital on down the line. The prescription drug coverage is incredibly important. I know that's another issue the president is working hard on, to bring down prices of prescription drugs. In-home care, transportation to appointments, having one point of contact for the senior or your caregiver to, if you've got specialty services and, if you need a specialist to manage multiple chronic conditions. And most people on Medicare Advantage who have chosen the plan do have multiple chronic conditions to manage. So this is a crucial program for millions and millions of seniors, but also their families.
What is the motivation behind the rate freeze here? I assume it has something to do with the administration. They're taking very seriously the idea of weeding out fraud in American healthcare and trying to control healthcare costs. Is that the motivation behind this, you think?
I think that's part of it. But we've polled this extensively, and we commissioned a poll late last year by Republican pollster who we both know, Kristen Soltis Anderson, and
Oh, yeah.
she found that 91% of seniors, view Medicare Advantage not as a healthcare issue, but as a cost of living issue. And so, if funding remains where it is right now, if that advance rate notice doesn't change and go up to meet the realities of healthcare costs today, seniors are going to have higher out-of-pocket costs. They're going to have less access to the doctors and services that they need. Billions of dollars in costs will be passed directly onto seniors. And so, we understand that, but seniors have also voiced their opinion that, they care less about, they care less about reducing the government budget if it means cutting programs that they rely on. Think about it this way. This is a program that seniors have paid into their entire careers. And when they turn 65, they expect the government to meet their promise to provide health care in their retirement. And so that's, we understand and certainly appreciate the effort to reduce government spending, but it cannot be done on the backs of seniors and the health care that they rely on.
So we're talking with Darren Grubb. He is a healthcare policy expert, spokesperson for Medicare Advantage Majority, about this Medicare Advantage program. So the issue that we're discussing today, Darren, is this proposed rate freeze. What's the better path? If you could wave a magic wand here and make a recommendation to the administration, what's the better path?
Well, the better path, quite frankly, is for the administration and members of Congress, to listen to their constituents. Again, I think that in an election year where affordability is going to be a key issue, whether we want to talk about it or not, this is something that's going to drive seniors out to the polls. And a huge component of an annual budget is what seniors are paying out for healthcare. And so, again, the math just doesn't work. If you've got healthcare costs, rising by 7% a year, a 0.09% increase in the federal government investment in a critical program of Medicare Advantage, the delta is just too large. And so there's no choice but these costs to be passed on to seniors. And that's going to be a huge problem. So, we're encouraging seniors to contact their members of Congress, to reach out to the White House and encourage CMS to reconsider this advance rate notice. And when they provide a final rate notice, for it to more accurately reflect the reality of the financial environment that we're in.
I assume you're getting a lot of support from members of Congress. What kind of timeline are we on here, Darren? When will these final decisions be made?
Yeah, so we expect the final rate notice to come out in early April, give or take. And so they are open for CMS accepts public comment, public input, up until early spring. And so, we've got about a month window, I would call it, for seniors and caregivers and family members. And, this is to make their voices heard.
That voice you're hearing on the Scott Jennings Show today, Darren Grubb. He is the spokesperson for Medicare Advantage Majority. Medicare Advantage is a healthcare program for seniors that benefits 35 million people right now. And these issues of rate freezes and things may sound like a little mundane government stuff, but it is vital to the operations of this program, which is quite popular with the people who use it. Darren, thanks for coming on the Scott Jennings Show. Glad to have you today.
Great to see you, man. Thank you again.
Good to see you, sir. We'll have more breaking news when we come back. It's Common Sense for the American People. Scott Jennings is here on Salem.
The voice of reason. Common sense for the American people. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
It is Wednesday, March the 4th. Home stretch here on the Scott Jennings Show. Last night we had a primary in the state of Texas. Our final guest is Congressman Craig Goldman from Texas. Congressman, welcome back to the Scott Jennings Show, and congratulations. You had the best kind of an election last night, one in which you had no opponent. Is that right?
That's right, Scott. I said my mother voted for me and put me over the top. So,
there you go.
Was, expect a Texas primary, expect the unexpected. We had a lot of unexpected last night, no question.
Well, we've had a lot of breaking news on this today. Of course, the runoff exists now between Senator Cornyn and Attorney General Paxton. And in just the last few minutes, President Trump has issued a statement saying he intends to endorse someone here. He did not do that in the initial primary phase. In your opinion, should the president weigh in, and who should he endorse?
Well, not only did he just say, we just came from the floor. We had 5 votes just now on the House floor. It was the talk of the floor, one that he is going to endorse. And then the second part is he expects whoever he does not endorse to drop out of the race to save hundreds of millions of dollars potentially in a runoff election. So, it looks like he is definitely going to endorse. I endorsed Senator Cornyn from day one. I think he's the right man to continue to be our United States Senator. He's been great for Texas. He's extremely respected in the United States Capitol, not only on the Senate side, but on the House side as well. So I certainly hope that that person that President Trump endorses is Senator Cornyn, and I absolutely believe he should endorse.
Yeah, I think the president's instincts here are correct, that if he gets involved, the other person should drop out. It would be massively expensive, and frankly, for no reason, if that doesn't happen. But you know Texas politics, and you know these players better than us. Do you think it's likely that if the president did endorse Senator Cornyn, that Paxton would stand down? What's your opinion?
Well, I never predict what General Paxton is going to do or not do. You know, he's been a House member, he's been in the state Senate, and now our Attorney General. So he's had a great career being elected time and time again, and I'm sure he thinks he can still win no matter what. But again, for the good of the party, if the president chooses Senator Cornyn, like I hope he does, I sure hope General Paxton will not decide to end his campaign and look for something else to do.
Let's talk about the Democrats for a second. They had a primary last night as well, and James Tallarico got the nomination. Actually, let's hear a little bit from Tallarico. Now, the Democrats, as you know, parade this man around like he's some sort of a moderate option, but let's listen to Cut 22.
Our southern border should be like our front porch. There should be a giant welcome mat out front.
Congressman Goldman, is that going to fly in a Texas general election?
Scott, I served with James Tallarico. And in fact, a couple of weeks ago, I was asked by the network that you work for, CNN, who I think is going to win. And I said, I think Tallarico is going to beat Crockett because Tallarico has run a picture-perfect campaign in the Democrat primary. I followed it closely. And frankly, Jasmine did not. Jasmine ran on her name. Tallarico is not who you think that he is, and he's got a voting record and has numerous hours of speaking, whether it was on the House floor, even before he became a House member. That, remember Beto O'Rourke, how popular he was? I think the Democrats are going to get behind him for his Beto O'Rourke, because people will get behind Tallarico for his popularity, but then Republicans will show exactly what he said and the true liberal, progressive Democrat that he actually is, that hopefully he won't stand a chance against John Cornyn, and he shouldn't. But he'll be able to raise a lot of money as a formidable candidate, and that's why we need John Cornyn facing in November and not Ken Paxton.
Yeah, Democrats love to flush money down the toilet in Texas, that's for sure. Let's keep talking about this immigration issue, though, because I think it's going to be one of the biggest issues in the race. Today, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem testified in front of the House. She reported that 3 million illegal aliens have left the country since President Trump came into office again. 1,500 known or suspected terrorists have been arrested, and that 0 illegal aliens have been released into the country since President Trump came back into office. It's a pretty good record. Do you believe the illegal immigration issue is going to be front and center in this Texas Senate race and really in congressional races across the country?
Well, I still believe it will be, because we have to think back. We have to remind people under Democrat control, under Joe Biden and his administration, the hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants that cross that border every single day, especially in Texas. We don't know where they came from. We didn't know their backgrounds. You know, it was reported that Venezuela was literally emptying their prisons and sending them up north, and they crossed our borders. So it's going to remain an issue, because we're seeing that they didn't just cross the border and stay in Texas. They crossed the border and fled all over across the United States of America, not knowing who they were, where they were from, what their background's from, a lot of them with criminal history. So there's no question, and there wasn't one Democrat that said, stop this. This is ridiculous. I mean, it's common sense, which is kind of two common words you don't use in government. But my gosh, name me another country where they accept illegal immigrants at the level that we did in the 4 years under the Biden administration. It's not who we are as the United States of America.
Congressman, thanks for joining the show today. We're out of time. We'll get you back soon. Appreciate you, sir.
Thanks.